Welcome to another free episode of the Shadow Band Podcast. As we all know, the big tech censorship is getting out of hand and becoming quite Orwellian with each passing day. As you can imagine, this show that you all have generously supported in this past year is no longer being monetized. And for that reason, I have to ask that you help us reach our goals of bringing you higher quality content with higher profile guests. Head on over to shadowbandpodcast.com and check out some of our high quality merch, or look for the donate button to help us grow this show and keep the content flowing. The only way we can fight back against the tech overlords is with your support. So please, share the show with your friends, leave us a review, and consider helping us financially while rocking some of our awesome merch. Enjoy the show.
Welcome. Tonight's program will dive deep into fringe knowledge of lost, hidden, and suppressed truths about the nature of our reality. The decoding process can be uncomfortable and at times frightening. However, you are not alone on this journey of understanding. Welcome to the Shadow Band Podcast, and welcome home.
All right. Well, we're not live. I was going to say we're live. We're not really live. We're recording, but we're live. And we're back. Shadow
Live
Band
enough.
Podcast. Yeah, live enough, man. I'm alive. I know you're alive, so that's what matters. We got somebody super special today. Somebody I've been following for, I don't know, a couple months now on the old Instagram. This guy, he's been making some waves in the, I hate to call it the truther movement, but that's kind of the reality of the situation, I suppose. And we got Tarrant Firestride, or Hatter Will Happen on Instagram. Tarrant, how's it going, bud?
I'm well, man. I'm well, thanks. Glad to be here.
Absolutely,
Glad to
man.
be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. I first heard you on Matt's show, the Great Deception podcast. Then I heard you on Upstate Unconventional. And I know you've been kind of making your way around on a bunch of shows lately. What's up? You said you're doing a podcast soon too, right?
Yeah, I've got it all set up, registered, ready to record. I've just been on a guest appearance, at least one a week for the last, month or month and a half. And my pod is called Tea with the Hatter. And I've got some pretty big ideas as far as where I want to take that and what I want to do with it. It's just been tough to find the time. Like, the big thing is it's got to be natural, and with recording 1 to 3 of these a week, it's tough to find the energy and the flow to be able to, kind of produce a product that is going to be what I want it to be. I, for a while there, was really hesitant because I wasn't exactly sure which direction I wanted to take it. And I've decided recently, like, it's just going to be whatever it is, I'm kind of a mess, scatterbrained, and so that's kind of the way that I'm sure my podcast will end up being as well. There'll be interviews. There'll be sometimes if I want to rant about something that I can't talk about on Instagram, it'll go on there, conversations with friends. Most of my friends I've never met, they're online people. I'm from the Portland area, and I don't fit in here. So, like, as far as in-person human interaction, there's not a whole lot of that in my life. But I get into some pretty good conversations with, friends on the opposite end of the country or the other side of the pond. And I think some of them would be interesting to listen to. So I think one of the things I'm going to start doing is just recording conversations and just let it flow. I don't ever really prepare anything. I kind of just turn the valve and see what's going to come out.
Yeah, well,
just
you're on
try
the
to
right
share
show today, bud,
my
'cause I'm telling
journey.
you.
Sounds like I'm in the right place, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, honestly, that's the way to do it, to be honest with you. Don't get stuck in your own thoughts about it. You know, don't I hear a lot of people, a lot of shows, and you can tell that it's very structured and it's like they put a whole lot of thought. And some of those shows are great. In fact, my second show, that's kind of what we do. We write, you know, presentations and we write scripts for that show. But there's something to just free flowing, just letting the words pop out as they come and let the thoughts come in as they come. And it's just, that's, in my opinion, those are the best shows. So,
Well, and it's one of the things that I really try to include in my message is to, you know, get out of your own way. And you've got the brain and then you've got the mind, right, which are often confused. But I think that when we get stuck in the brain, we have a hard time letting the mind out, and we tend to humanize things and tend to try to rationalize certain things that sometimes don't need humanized or rationalized. And so just letting that true self out, I think, is a crucial part of this journey, and just letting it be what it is, you know?
yeah, for sure. And before I started this show a little over a year ago, you know, I've been listening to podcasts for years and years now. And there was always that thought in the back of my mind, it's like, could I even do a podcast? Like, would anybody listen to it? Like, you get stuck beating yourself up before you even get started. And I feel like that's a lot of people with a lot of things. Like, people don't want to take a leap of faith, whether it's a podcast or a new job or whatever the case may be, because they just think of all the things that could go wrong instead
Right.
of just letting the things happen. And I've heard you say a lot like like shit happens, right? Like nobody's perfect and you're going to fucking make mistakes all along the road, but
Absolutely.
if you're conscious of that, like you can take a mistake and turn it into something good. There's a saying that I like to quote a lot that's life is um what is it? Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well,
So,
and one big thing that Hermeticism teaches is that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So for every ounce of good that you claim, you're going to get an ounce of bullshit. Um, and so for me, things that happen in my experience, I try not to see them as good or bad. They just are, right? And the things that feel negative, I tell myself, and I'm just looking at it wrong, right? There's a light that, there's a positive in everything, even if it's a painful positive, you know, even if the positive is that you're going to grow through this shitty experience, that's still a positive, you know. And so when a big shift happened for me was when I stopped asking myself, like, why is this happening to me? You know, why did I get dealt a bad hand? Because I was a very victim oriented for a long time, but I changed that to, you know, why have I put myself here and how can I grow from this? You know, what am I supposed to learn from this? Because I think there is a lesson in everything, you know, no matter what it is, whether or not how big or small, there's always something that we can take from it. And if we're just kind of coasting through this experience, then I think we're selling ourselves short.
yeah, for sure. That kind of pushes a lot of what I talk to about, like with my personal relationships with people is, you know, stop being the victim. You know what I mean? Like, this is your reality. I always tell people this is your simulation. This is your reality. You know what I
Right.
mean? So you can make whatever you want out of it. You know, it can be a shitty reality and a shitty life, you know, where you have all these problems, or you can take that and spin it into a positive somehow, some way. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
You're either a master of your experience or you're a victim of somebody else's experience, you
yeah,
know, and
exactly.
things are only what you allow them to be, you know. And that's something that really changed my life. Was I can't change the way that the world is overnight, you know, and I can't change the way that people are going to act, but I can change the way that I allow those things to affect me, right? And ultimately, the way that I allow those things or don't allow those things to affect me is what is going to dictate my experience. You can go out there and you can experience mass hysteria, you know, you can be in this post-apocalyptic, or maybe not even post-apocalyptic, just apocalyptic reality that it's available. It's there if that's what you want to tune into right now. You know, there's plenty of bullshit that you can go out there, and if that's the life that you want to live, it's readily available right now. But I don't live in a, you know, some crazy outbreak. I live in I breathe air, and I interact with people and I hug and I freaking smile at people when I walk by. I don't accept this whole new normal or whatever this is supposed to be. This is my experience, and I choose to be happy, and I choose not to live in fear, and I choose to uh, love the people around me, and I try to share this path and this journey that I've been lucky enough to find with other people, because it really is a choice. And people, I think, people for the most part don't understand that all of this is consensual. Every aspect of this experience is dictated by us. So
Yeah, that's a big reason why I wanted to get you on here, honestly, because the first, I don't know how many episodes I'm in now, 50 something episodes, and the first dozen or so episodes was heavy conspiracies, right? I've been the conspiracy theorist my whole life.
yep.
So the first dozen shows were just, let me just lay out these different, scenarios, these different theories. And some of it's dark, man. Some of it is it can weigh heavy on you. You know what I mean? Especially if you spend 15, 20 years into that, it can definitely affect you. Your anxiety levels, your depression levels, all those things can be affected just by digging into conspiracy world. So I've been trying to get a few people on recently. I just had Deplorable Janet on the show to talk about, like, natural health and all that
Right.
good stuff. And so I wanted to get you on because you have like a very positive message, you know what I mean? And that doesn't, of course we can still talk about things that are crazy and wild in this world, but you always seem, at least in my perspective, to kind of bring it back to like a positive outlook. And like I showed your episode with Matt on The Great Deception to my girlfriend, and dude, she hit me up. She was like, dude, he blew my mind. Like everything he said resonated with her so hard and so heavy, like,
That's great to hear.
yeah, you made a big fan out of her. She wanted to come on to at least say hi, but she had to run a little while ago. But shout
I
out to
really
her. So
appreciate that. Yeah,
yeah,
that's great. And Janet is one of my good friends. I've known Janet for a couple years now, and as far as good people go, it doesn't get much better than Janet. She's awesome. And I found this path through conspiracy. So I was the kid in high school that was, in the early 2000s, it was talking about how 9/11 was an inside job, and I was crazy, right? And once I woke up to the scheme early. I wrote my freshman thesis on high school as a manufacturing facility, and how
mm,
they take all these different products, these different materials, and they try to punch them into the same product. And that if you can't be punched into this specific product, then you end up in the reject pile, and you're either funneled into the prison system or onto pharmaceuticals, or they're going to get you one way or the other. And so I kind of developed this everyone's trying to kill me mentality, because in reality, whether it's the food that you eat or the water that you drink or the news that you consume, everything, there's not much here that's it's very difficult to live healthy, right? This experience is meant to keep you as sick and as unhappy as possible, while still able to work and afford pharmaceuticals, in my opinion. And I found spirituality through, it was interesting to hear Sam Tripoli say that conspiracy always leads to spirituality, because I was not spiritual whatsoever. I had a pretty rough upbringing, and I had Mormonism shoved down my throat on one side, and then Christianity shoved down my throat on the other side. And so sometimes I had to be Mormon, and sometimes I had to be Christian. And I just kind of put religion all together in this box with the trauma that I had gone through. I had a very abusive stepdad, and so I moved out at 16, and I just ran from all of it, right? And I had this chip on my shoulder. I was angry. I was angry about my childhood, and I was angry about the way that the world worked. And the more truth I discovered, the angrier I got. And when I got really deep into some of the dark stuff that I think you were probably referring to, that is not only happening but being condoned and protected by the the people that control this place, I was upset, you know, and I was upset that everyone was trying to kill me. And I was upset that when I wanted to get healthy, the amount of energy and the amount of money and the amount of knowledge that I had to acquire and then sacrifice just to try to not put poison in my body anymore. I was very upset about it. And one day it just clicked, and it was like, wait, all of this is to try to keep me from knowing who and what I am and what I'm capable of, you know, because people, it was always the question that everybody had was, do you think, or, you know, do you think everything was a conspiracy? And it's like, well, yeah, you know, or not everything's a conspiracy, Jeff. And it was what I got my whole childhood. And but it is, you know, and what ties, there's just one giant conspiracy, and what ties that together is the spiritual aspect of this, what we truly are. I mean, we're meant to believe that we're this cosmic accident that is basically just breathing up good air, you know, and it's not fun to feel like a parasite on the plane that you walk. And it's very intentional, it's very deliberate, and they work very hard to put that in our heads. And so I realized at one point that, and this was through avenues of alchemy and hermeticism, that that stuff is only, it only has the control over me that I give it, right? And that I have rights, and that I have a sense of sovereignty that can't be taken away from me. I can forfeit it, right? I can be talked into giving it away, but nobody can take that from me. And after making peace with that, and that, you know, people are going to think what people are going to think. And something I like to say all the time is, you can either live to be righteous or you can live to look righteous, you know, but you can't have both. And I want to walk my path and do what's right. And I don't really care how that action is perceived. I'm going to tell the truth, which means I'm going to be an outcast, right? And I spent a long time trying to fit in with people that I don't have any desire to be a part of their club. You know, it was so much time and so much energy and so much stress trying to just be viewed as normal my whole life. And it's like, that's not a normal that I want to be. And so learning how to, the difference between observation and internalization was huge for me. You can't, when you, so especially in conspiracy, you can't take all of that into your being. You can't, because you're going to get depressed. And you're going to start to vibrate that into your experience. And these things that we've tried to get away from end up working their way back into our lives. And so step one, priority number one, rule number one is love yourself, right? And take care of yourself. And you can't love yourself, you can't take care of yourself if you're depressed, or if you're angry, or if you're resentful. So this goes back to things just are, right? There is no good or bad, right? Because ultimately both of those things are an opinion. And my opinion doesn't matter outside of my experience, and nobody else's opinion matters in my experience, you know? So making peace with all of that, and just saying, okay, so we're going to take all this, we're going to use all this, whether it makes me want to get upset or whether it makes me want to get sad, this just is, and I can't stop this, but I can use this to either help people wake up. I can use it to, there's a lot of ways that we can transmute all of this. And just like with the way that the world has been over the last couple of years, it has really made a lot of people upset and depressed. And I am grateful for the last 2 years. I've grown more in the last 2 years than in my entire life before that. And I have seen more people start to wake up and understand the happenings of this place. And I've seen people find spirituality that I never thought would find spirituality. And it was through necessity, you know? So I would not take any of this back. As hard as it's been, and as frustrating as it's been, and as inconvenient as it's been, this is what we needed. And you have to be able to turn this into a positive, because I believe this is going to get worse before it gets better. And we need each other, and we need ourselves, and we need each other. We need ourselves healthy, right? And happy, and operating in a vibration of love and compassion, as opposed to a vibration of fear or anger, because karma is not a bitch, she's a mirror, you know. And what we put out there is exactly what we're going to experience. And so it's on us at this point to, and you know, when it comes to conspiracy, all these terrible people and all the terrible things that are happening, we need them too. You know, people like that are what made people like me start to use my voice, and what made other people stand up and say no, or start using their platforms that they were using to, you know, sell shit and make money, to start telling the truth. And so to Ball Gates and to everybody else that is doing terrible things out there, I say thank you, because they made me just as much as my stepdad made me, just as much as anybody else did. And for every ounce of dark, there has to be an ounce of light. And so the worse this place gets, the better this place gets at the same time. And is making people finally willing to stand up for themselves and be willing to fight to change this place, which is what this place needs.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that, man. 100%. I mean, and you and I have probably a very similar upbringing. You know, I was always the black sheep. I didn't fit into school at all. You know, I was getting expelled from schools all the time and sent to the bad kids school. I had to ride the short bus because they wouldn't let me on the regular bus anymore. All these things, you know what I mean? And it turned into what I am now, you know, like,
Right.
and I used to think
Made
that I
you.
was, yeah, I used to think that I was a rebel, right? Like that I was like anti-establishment 100%. I mean, I had the same problem as you as well, where I wouldn't say a problem, but I had the same situation where religion was, I wouldn't say it was shoved down my throat, but it was all around me to the point to where when I went out on my own, you know, I got Baphomet tattoos and just like I was heavy metal, you know, like fuck the system, you know what I mean? And I was all into it, you know what I mean? And now at this point, I regret those decisions because I'm like, wow, there is some power to these symbols, all of that shit, and getting sucked into the conspiracy world, man. It, like I was saying, those vibrations, those negative vibrations can definitely latch onto you. And the parasites, the interdimensional psychic vampires, like Alex Jones calls them, like they feed on that shit. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's one thing to be aware of the chemtrails and the fluoride and stuff like that. But once you're aware of that stuff, I mean, you have the choice. It's all free will, right? So like the whole I'm not going to comply situation, that's free will. So
Right.
as far as this whole pandemic situation in the last couple years, man, I'm right with you. I smile at the guy on the corner. I'm hugging people just the same. You know what I mean? And you can
Right.
almost see these other people like they're afraid almost like, oh, don't give me a hug, you know? And it's like
Right.
that saddens me because I'm like, man, you know what I mean? You're missing out on so much, you know, that
Absolutely.
just because the parasite class wants you to, like Sam Tripoli uses the term stealing your loosh. And I don't think
Yeah.
they're stealing your loosh. I think you're giving your
You're
loosh
giving it to
away.
him. Absolutely.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
know, so that's crazy shit, man. It really
Well,
is.
and for the average Joe, I mean, the way that everyone can contribute right now, because this is a war, it's a war for your freedom, and it's a war for, I mean, ultimately it's a war for your soul and who you are and what you are. But the way that everybody can contribute to this, because not everybody's meant to fight, not everybody's a warrior, but everybody can peacefully non-comply, right? Everybody can stop putting their energy into things that are doing things that we don't agree with, because that's how we vote, is with our attention, with our intention, and with our dollars. um, and so the if someone or something is doing something that you don't approve of, or that is hurting someone that you care about, or is hurting someone, anyone in general, then stop giving that corporation, or that, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's, you know, Amazon, or whether it's, stop feeding the things that you don't believe in, you know. And if you don't think that it's a healthy choice for you to put something over your face that's going to make it so you can't breathe when you go into public, then don't put the shit over your face,
Hmm.
you know. Because why we're here, you may have seen a video I did a while ago. It was compliance is your consent, and your consent makes you complicit. You know, we're all here because we've complied as a collective, and not you and not Joe and not Johnny, but this we, right? This collective has said, okay, fine, we'll do it. You know, we'll do it for 2 weeks, 144 weeks ago. And so and it's just like I like to use the reference with 9/11 and your shoes at the airport. You know, they were like, oh, it's just going to be for a couple months until we get this new security thing figured out. We're still taking our shoes off, dude. It's been 20 years, and maybe that's not a huge deal. Maybe it's a minor inconvenience that helps keep us safe, you know, but it starts with that and it turns into other things. It starts with a face covering for 2 weeks and 6 foot apart, and that turns into people are scared to hug each other, and people are scared. And here's the thing, like, they don't want you to be able to share energy with other humans. We have an energetic field, right? That and part of
field,
being
yeah.
exactly, and part of being human, we're not meant to be alone, right? We're not meant to be in the middle of the wilderness by ourselves with no human interaction. We're a people that is meant to interact and share energy and grow from each other. And it's not healthy physically or mentally or emotionally or spiritually to be isolated the way that we're isolated. And you know, when I walk into the store, if somebody's really going to give me a hard time about it, I'll just say that I have a medical exemption, because I know that HIPAA law prevents someone from asking my medical history, and that's kind of a just put the kibosh on it, right? And people will tell you in my part of the country, at least, that, oh, we're not accepting medical exemptions. And it's like, okay, so hold on, let's back up for a second. You're telling me that this is for my health, right? Well, yeah, okay. And I just told you that I saw a doctor who went to school to determine what is best for my health, and he's determined that I shouldn't wear that because it's unhealthy for me. But you're telling me to wear it anyways for my health, right? So how does this work out, you know? And when I go to the doctor, it's and I don't see a doctor, but I've had to take my grandma and stuff, and it's like, listen, I'm not going to put that on. I know that wearing a face covering is not conducive to good bronchial health, you know, and you know that as well. And so you can't tell me that you're trying to protect me. I can protect me, right? I have the ability to discern what I think is the best course of action for me to maintain my health. And if I feel like I need an outside opinion, or if I need help with that, then I will ask. But it's no one's place to tell me how to manage my own health. I'm an adult, and I'm a capable adult, and we all just need to allow people to walk their path. And when you don't have the ability to choose for yourself, then we are prisoners, or we are slaves. And I do not accept that. That is something that doesn't take place in my reality, and the repercussions of me making that decision don't really matter to me. I'm going to go to the places that I want to go, and I'm going to do the things that I want to do, and I'm going to breathe oxygen while I do it. And if people don't like that, then I'm okay with that. You know, they don't have to agree with the decisions that I make, but I'm going to do what I think is best, and I'm going to encourage other people to do the same. Like I said, if you feel safe with one of those things on, then by all means put one of those things on. If you feel safe by injecting yourself with something that you probably don't understand, then do that, you know. But don't tell me what I have to do with my body, because this is my experience, and I'm going to live it the way that I think is best, and I'm going to do it happily, right? And as I get these people that look at me sideways, or that want to tell me that I'm a bad person, I'm going to smile at them, and I'm going to tell them that I hope they have a great day, and I'm going to do my best to shed some love into that person's life, because ultimately what they're upset about is that I'm a free and sovereign being, and they're not. And it is frustrating, and I would be angry if I was a victim of somebody else's experience. So I can't knock them for that, right? I can't act like I don't understand why they're upset or why they're acting that way, because I do understand. And I would probably feel the same way in their position. So showing someone love through the bullshit sometimes is all it takes to get them to go, okay, maybe this guy's not so bad. Maybe it doesn't make me a bad person to do what I want to do. And it starts with one person, you know, and I can't change the whole world at the same time, but I can create a reality that makes me happy, and I can create a reality that's full of love and full of compassion, and full of positivity. And I can expand that reality every day, and I can help that reality overlap with other people's experiences and hope that they start to do the same. And that shit snowballs, man. It really does. We have the power to change this place. We just have to stop settling, because ultimately that's what this whole thing is we're settling, and we're buying the apathy that they're selling, and we're buying compromise. And there's not room for compromise right now. We're at a time in history where this is going to make or break the collective experience. We're either going to rise up from this, and we're going to be rewarded for it, and this is going to be a very special, very beautiful place to live, or we're not, and it's going to break us as a a populace, and it's not going to be a fun place to be. And so this is on us right now and not from a place of anger, and not from a place of fear, and not from a place of resentment, but from a place of love. We've got to come at this with everything, with all of our energy and all of our attention and all of our intention. And we've got to put in some work, because there's work that needs to happen right now. And how that starts is just by doing and not doing what you do and don't believe in. It's standing up for yourself, and doing it unapologetically, because it's not selfish to put yourself first. You know, we're taught that it's selfishness is not letting people feed off of you, or not letting people take advantage of you. And you know, we need to remember that it's okay to that self-care and self-help is not only appropriate or acceptable, that it's necessary. And we need to deal with the things that make us uncomfortable, and grow from them, whether it's childhood trauma or the things that are happening in the world right now. We need to use this, otherwise it's for nothing, you know. This has been hard on all of us, so let's make something of it.
Yeah, for sure. And you said a few things there that really resonate. I mean, number one, first, the 3 C's, you know what I mean? I can't, my brain doesn't work all the time. So what was that quote again with the 3 C's?
Your compliance is your consent, and your consent makes you complicit.
Boom. I mean, genius, you know, so you got to make shirts with that on it. That should be like your first shirt when you drop the podcast, you know what I mean?
I like it, man.
The other thing too is like the free will thing, right? And like you were saying, like, I'm not going to go around and tell somebody not to use the face diaper. I'm not going to go tell you not to get the stab. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's
Right.
your free will. And I personally don't believe in altering that in any way. So I'm not going to try to convince anybody outside of me just telling you what I believe. You know what I
Right.
mean? And if you want to take that however you want, that's fine. But like, I don't go around telling people, take that off. Because some people who listen to the show, I'm sure, are those guys. You know, they'll go out and they'll go to Walmart and they'll see somebody with a mask, and then they start hitting them with the take it off, man, like blah, blah, blah. And it's like,
Right.
that's not going to help anything. You know what I mean? Honestly, let people do what they want to do.
Exactly.
It's super important not to like violate somebody else's free will. And then the other point you made, I'll take this quote from Greg Carlwood. He says, feed the things you want to grow and starve the things that got to go. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? So stop,
Absolutely.
you know, if you're one of these anti-corporation people, stop going to corporations. If you're, anti-GMO, stop going to McDonald's, whatever the case may be. And I'm not perfect. Don't get me wrong. I had McDonald's this morning for breakfast because it was convenient and it was there and like I had to do what I had to do, you know what I mean? But you can take steps towards it. Like I stopped smoking weed almost 2 months ago, cold turkey. Why? Just because I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it because it's not great for you. Like, I mean, I'm sure that, dude, I've been smoking my whole life, but there's
How are
plenty
those
of
night
benefits.
sweats?
Yeah, I mean, dude, I dream so good now. I'm telling you, my dreams are
Yeah,
freaking on point, man. I love it. But we all got vices, so I don't expect anybody and everybody to drop all your vices all at the same time and switch to an all organic diet all overnight and everything because that's hard to do. You know what I mean? And your
it's
mental
a
health,
process.
yeah, it's a process, and your mental health, in my opinion, is more important than almost any of those things. So if you let go of all the things you enjoy at once, you're not going to be happy enough to be motivated enough to keep up with your new diet and your new things. So for me personally, I let one thing go, let a couple months go by, let the next thing go, and I just kind of wean myself onto this new path of being healthy and taking care of my body and all that shit. But that's all super important, man, to raise that vibration, man, because we're all kind of stuck in this low vibration state because these parasites have been doing all these things. Like you were saying, keep me 6 feet away from you. But that's like literally the size of your toroidal field from your heart
Right.
chakra, 6 feet. That's why they bury you 6 feet underground. You know what I mean?
Not
It's
to
like,
mention the rituals that take place with face coverings and standing
mm-hmm,
in a circle 6 feet apart and
mm-hmm,
everything. Nothing that is handed down is arbitrary. And that's another thing is like we need to educate ourselves. We need to understand uh, word magic and we need to understand sigil magic because this is being used on us and we can't protect ourselves from something that we don't understand. You brought up corporations and every corporate logo that you've ever seen is a sigil, and that thing is charged and that thing is alive now, right? And uh it's a seed that someone plants, and every dollar that we spend on that entity now, because now that sigil is associated with that corporation, and this is a thought form that actually exists now, and every dollar and every ounce of the attention that we pay to it is feeding that and growing that. And we need to understand and understand what our words mean, and what we're saying to each other and the impact that those words have on the people around us and on ourselves, because we are powerful creators, um, very powerful creators. And a lot of what is introduced to us is weaponized, whether it's the way that we greet each other or the way that we say goodbye to each other or the way that we joke around with each other. This stuff is engineered and weaponized to create hardship and to create low vibrations in our lives. And a lot of symbols, especially ancient symbols, are inverted, and we don't understand their true meaning. And it's interesting that you brought up the Baphomet, because a lot of people associate Baphomet with the devil or with Satan or with Lucifer, which are all separate entities. We're told that all of those things are the same. And like, I thought Baphomet was the devil for most of my life. And then in researching the Templar Knights and what they were and what they were about, the Baphomet is middle way. And so you have one hand up and one hand down, right? You've got the breasts and you've got the caduceus that's making a phallus. And so this is dark and light. This is left and right. This is feminine and masculine. And so you have the left hand and right hand paths. And Baphomet is kind of the in between those two things, because understanding that there are poles, right? And the principle of polarity states that everything has poles, right? And so whether it's red or blue, Democratic or Republican, which is, people don't realize the left wing and the right wing are two wings of the same bird. And so these people are using the principle of polarity and creating two poles that are equal and opposite, right? And everything that exists in between that is rhythm, right? And that rhythm creates a vibration, and that vibration dictates our experience. And so we have to understand that neither one of these poles are ever going to be where we want to be. The alchemist is the constant. We want to be in the middle, and we want to let the world do this around us. And just like when we talked about internalization versus observation, like we can observe these things and we can interpret these things and we can learn from these things without allowing these things to affect us and our path and our vibrations, right? And so that's a big part of what that symbol means to me. And I'm sure that there are people that use that symbol for things that I wouldn't necessarily agree with, or things that I wouldn't consider nice or positive. But I try to speak on that when it gets brought up, because a lot of these symbols were handed upside down, and some of these symbols can carry very powerful ideologies, and we're missing out on those by putting them in boxes. Just like, I was told that crystals are super taboo. Don't mess with crystals. That's I think I was told that was devil shit when I was a kid or something.
Yeah.
Along those lines. Yeah. That's what those Satanists do. And it's like, that is what lit the fire in my experience, was understanding, because crystal carries a vibration, right? Which one could make the argument that makes it alive. And we carry vibrations, and when we bring that crystal into our auric field, it alters our vibrations. And so understanding and learning that I could not only feel those, but that I could use them and engineer my experience with these things, and then learning how to adjust my vibration and seeing how that affected my experience was incredibly empowering for me. And it also made me realize that the things that I was taught were bad or evil maybe weren't so bad. And so then I started exploring alchemy, right? And this is how I found Hermeticism, and working the Hermetic principles really gave me accountability, first of all, over my life, because it's important that I don't have anyone to blame for where I'm at, right? Because if I'm sitting here and I'm blaming you, or I'm blaming him, or I'm blaming mom, or I'm blaming the bad hand that I got dealt, then I'm not in control, right? I'm along for the ride, and I'm a victim. And so the first thing that alchemy helped me do was take control and take responsibility for my experience. And then I could start slowly chipping away at transmuting this lead that I had spent a lifetime acquiring into something more favorable, like gold. And all these alchemical texts that we read they talk about metal. It's metallurgy. It's lead to gold, right? But this was a way for them to be able to write books and to preserve this gnosis. And the initiate understands that these words that are being read are more than what we're reading, right? These axioms can mean 10, 12, 15, 20 different things. I read the Kabbalion every 6 months minimum. I think I read it 3 or 4 times in the first few months I had it. And each read with a new perspective made it a different book. And I just read it again maybe a month ago or a month and a half ago, and I was still just like, every once in a while something would click, and it's like, damn, man, that's huge. And you try to talk to somebody about it, and you share this axiom, and they're like, well, yeah, I know that. And it's like, no, but you don't understand. It's way bigger than that. And so just knowing that everything is subjective, right? Hermeticism teaches that all truths are but half truths, and because truth is ultimately based on perspective, and perspective is an opinion, right? So you and I can look at the same thing and be truthful about it and tell 2 very different stories, right? And think that we're righteous, or that we're correct. And maybe we are both righteous and both correct, but that doesn't make my truth any better than your truth, or your truth any better than my truth. We've all read the allegory of the cave. And it's important to remember that, and remember that not everybody's going to see the same thing as you, and that's okay. But ultimately, we just have to be responsible for our experience and create the most favorable reality that we can for ourselves, and hope that that overlaps into the experiences of others, and that they will perpetuate those vibrations, you know?
Yeah, for sure. The saying I usually use is more than one thing can be true at once. That's just the easy way for me
Yeah,
to kind of remember that principle all the time. More than one thing can be true at the same time. You know what I mean? In everything.
absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I don't know, it's pretty crazy, but like the words, word magic is wild. I want to do, I say this every episode. Somebody brings up like the word magic situation. I'm always like, yeah, I'm going to do a whole episode on that. And I just never get around to it. But something I noticed that you do a lot, like on your Instagram, is, when you make a video or you do like a story or whatever, you always say, hey, happy Sun's Day, or, on, you did one on a Thursday, it was happy Thor's Day.
Right.
Um, could you like elaborate a little bit on like what the days of the weeks are named after and like what they mean? Because I know for Thor, you said, Thor, he helped people when he didn't need to. He was I don't know the word that you use, but, and then you were like, oh, today's Thursday, so I'm going to go help somebody. You know what I mean?
Right. And Thor and his rune is also, it's shared with the word thorn. Um, and a thorn in your side or in your foot can be a very small thing. Um, but it can be very irritating and very painful and very annoying. And if you have a thorn in your foot and you ignore it and you try to just keep working, it's gonna create pain, and it's gonna create irritation for the whole day. Whereas if you stop and you address this small thorn and you pull it out, you can continue your day. And it's a good day to just remember to keep things in perspective, and understand that it's very easy for us to make things bigger than they are. And kind of let them snowball into our experience. You have Thor's day is Thursday, Friday is Freya's day, right? Which is Freya is probably my favorite deity. She was just an overcomer, right? She whether it was her beauty or her intelligence or her magic, she taught magic to the Asgardian gods and divination. And so she would find a way. She is the god of war. She is the god of, she's a fertility god, but she's not Aphrodite. So she's the god of all these things, but she's not like the main one, and what that is just her doing what she has to do. They're all just means to whatever end she's trying to achieve. And so she would get what she wanted one way or another. And that's something that I respect the shit out of. We put ourselves in these boxes and it's easy to go, oh, well, I'm not, when it's a narrative that's handed down, somebody just throws some gigantic numbers at us and we're like, oh, well, I'm not a mathematician, so I just have to believe that, when in reality, if you sit down and you start to work on these numbers, you realize that you are smart enough to figure out that that's bullshit, and so it's important to remember that we can, and the only things that we can't do are things that we're not willing to try.
Mm.
And Friday is kind of at the end of the week, and so it's easy to let things kind of get the best of you by the time that you're at the end of. It's also interesting that we call these days they're weeks, right? And these things make us weak, right? And they're called weekdays. And so we're walking around in this weekdays from this heavy work that we're basically forced to do. And when you wake up and you greet each other, where we say things like good morning, and it's like, well, what are we mourning?
Mm.
And so these are, when I was talking about the way that things are weaponized and how we were taught to bring each other down constantly, is with things like that. Like, I don't want to tell you to walk through the next 7 days of your life in a weekdays, and I don't want to tell you to mourn every day that the sun rises, you know. I want to say things that are going to empower you, which is why, like, on my videos, I'm not going to say good morning. I'm going to say grand rising, because it is grand, right? And it's a rising. This sun is rising, and that's a beautiful thing. It gives us life, and the sun heals us, you know. And the moon, it heals us psychically, and it feeds um, our what is the word I'm looking for? Our mental, and the sun heals the body, and the moon heals the mind, and the psychic powers. Saturday is Saturn Day, which is a big day for me. I did a couple hour presentation a while back on Saturn and what it is, and Saturn used to be the sun. So the ancient indigenous people all write about how there was a primordial or a primeval or a superior sun that went to rest.
Right, the first sun or the original sun.
Exactly. And so all of the elites, they don't worship the sun, they worship Saturn. And the rings that we wear when we get married are a reference to Saturn. Everything is about Saturn worship. We just don't know it, you know. And the day of the sun, or Sunday, is the sun that we are taught to worship, because all Abrahamic religion is based on solar worship. It's related to the solstice and the equinox. And this is not me disputing anything that is in anybody's holy books, but this is what the days are, you know. It's that just kind of is what it is. And so the sun that we are taught to worship is actually the sun, S-O-N. The S-U-N that we worship is the S-O-N of Saturn, right? The original sun.
Right.
And that ties into Greek and Roman with mythology about how Saturn, which is Kronos, was cast out, and then Zeus, who is the sun, kind of took over and got his reign. And so a lot of these days are based on either Norse, Greek, Roman deidal worship, and this deidal worship is all related to cosmic planetary worship. All of the deities were associated with a certain planet, you know. And Zeus is Jupiter, which we could talk about the connections between Zeus and Jesus, and Jupiter and Jupiter, and all of these words and these characters and these stories are very deliberate, right? And so it's important to research where these things come from. It's interesting that we're taught that esoteric knowledge is evil, but we're also taught to perpetuate them with the days of our week. And you know, Monday is the day of the moon. Tuesday is Tiw, T-I-W, or Tyr, and Tyr is one of my favorites. In Norse religion, Odin is king shit, and in Germanic mythology, or history, I like to call it, because that's what a lot of this mythology is just ancient history that's been rebranded. But Tiw was the chief deity in Germanic history, and he's not talked about a lot, but in the story of the binding of Fenrir, he sacrificed his hand to bind this wolf that needed to be taken care of. And he's kind of a god of war, but more of like justice, right? And achieving justice or truth or balance through violence, which is something that I think, as unaccepted as it is important. There's a time and a place for everything, and sometimes we have to fight for what is right. And so I think that to be a total pacifist is to sell yourself and sell your experience short. We have to be willing to stand up and to fight and to sacrifice for the things that are important to us, because the world that our kids are going to grow up in is the world that we leave and that we create. And so if we're not willing to fight for us, we need to be willing to fight for our children and for their experience. And sometimes that's ugly, you know. Like I said before, for the average Joe, peaceful non-compliance is the fastest way through this. And that's what time it is right now, is time for non-compliance and calm and loving defiance, right? And there will be a time where it's going to take more than that. And some of us are going to have to do things that we are probably not going to enjoy doing, because this is a beautiful place, and it's our job to protect it and to protect the people around us and protect the people that we care about. And that is what Tuesday really is to me, is that, you know, he knew when he stuck his hand in that wolf's mouth that he wasn't going to get it back. You know, he knew that. And but he knew that the wolf needed bound. And so when we know what needs to happen, and we know we have a clear line in the sand drawn, it doesn't matter what we have to do to protect that or to perpetuate that. Those are just details, right? And details don't matter. And his hand at that point was just a detail. And so the man did what he had to do for the good of himself and for the good of the people. And that's something that I can really respect. And so when you see this one-handed deity depicted, that's Tyr, and that's Tew, and he lost that hand during the binding of Fenrir, which is a story that if you haven't read about, it's an interesting read. All of Norse and Germanic history is very interesting, and it's hard to not see parallels between the pagan gods and the pagan stories and what we're taught in Abrahamic religion. It just is, you see a story of empowerment of the people or empowerment of self that is changed into a story of empowerment of one, right, outside of the self, or control, or profit, you know. And so a lot of these things have been moved around to help somebody that's not you. And so it's important to keep that in mind, that, and this is, you know, we're back to you gotta take care of yourself, and you gotta do what you need to do for yourself, and you need to develop a relationship with your creator, whatever you call that creator, or whatever, whether that's nature, you know, that's fine, but we all need to identify with something larger than ourselves, or else what are we doing here, you know? I think a lot of us can agree that we are bigger than this experience, and that when this body is dead and gone, that the consciousness that drives this body will do something. You know, you can believe whatever you want as far as where you go after this, but I think that most of us can agree that we're more than this vessel that we drive here. And if you believe that, then we need to be working towards what really matters. If this experience isn't it, then let's put in some work, and let's get to know the true us, right? And let's feed that us, and let that true self shine through into this experience, because ultimately, in my opinion, that's why we're here, is to bring that divine self into this experience, and allow that to shine across this plane, for lack of a better word. The last day is Wednesday, which is Woden's Day, which is probably one of the most well-known deities. Woden is Odin, right? Who is the All-Father, who is the god of war and poetry, and he's probably the most well-known. I mean, we've all seen the Avengers, right? He's Thor's dad. He's the king of Asgard, and they put him right smack dab in the middle of the week, and we can all draw strength from Odin, right? It's Wednesday is hump day, right? It's you really got to get your shit together and push so that you can make it to Freya, you know? So remembering that there's a strength in all of us, and that there's something bigger than us that is worth us putting our strength towards, is huge for me. But we need to research these things and step outside of our comfort zone and figure out what we're really saying when we're talking to each other, and what those words, what kind of effect they really have, because words are not written or read. A word is vibrated and a word is received, and so as soon as we start rearranging runes to create, you know, what these are spells, right? And it's not called spelling for no reason. We have a 26 rune alphabet as opposed to the Nordic 24 rune alphabet, but just like they rearranged runes to create spells and use rune magic, that's exactly what our language is. That's the English language is. It's called the language of angels. You know, it's a very powerful manifesting language, and we've all heard abracadabra, right? This is as I speak, I create. And so we're taking these runes and we're forming spells, and then we're vibrating them, right? We're speaking them, and these words now exist. They're real, they're measurable, they're palpable. We have spoken them into existence. And you know, the first principle of Hermeticism is the principle of mentalism, which states that, you know, all is mind. Everything exists in the mind before it can exist in the physical. And so an avenue for facilitating that manifestation is your voice, right? So you're taking a thought, or you're taking an intention, or you're taking an idea, and you're speaking that into the ether. And now you have something measurable that's associated with that. You have sound, you have vibration, which is, that's what all this is vibration. We're taught that, you know, we share 99.8% of our DNA with monkeys, right? And so that means we're monkeys. But what we're not taught is that we share 98% of our DNA with the damn tree or a rock outside, right? That we're all just carbon molecules that are vibrating at different speeds. And we call it junk DNA because we don't understand it. But, you know, even modern science doesn't understand the force that is binding those atoms, those molecules together, that are creating all these different objects. You could call it spirit, right? Which, if science acknowledges spirit, then everything goes out the window, and so they can't and they won't. But everything here is the same. This is all just one big vibration, just one big wavelength, and we are perceiving these vibrations, and we're perceiving them with 5 senses, right? That we're taught to use, and we're taught to ignore the rest of our senses. But once you can start operating from a place of mind as opposed to your brain, you can start experiencing and interpreting all these other things, which is something that crystals really unlocked for me, was realizing subtle energy, and embracing that. And I can do a lot of things with my mind that I would have told you wasn't possible 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whether it's projecting into people's dreams, or planting seeds, or I'm at this place right now where instead of messaging someone, I'm going to try to see if I can get them to message me.
I can
right?
attest to that too, by the way, because this happened just the other day. You know, I had a dream and you were in the dream, and it wasn't really you, because you know how dreams are, they're weird. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
you didn't look like you, but when I woke up, I was like, oh, that was Tarrant in my dream. So I messaged you and you were like, dude, I was just, you know, I just put that intention out, and I was like, see, there's something really deep to that stuff. Because like I was saying, before I did this show at all, I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do a podcast, oh, all these things. And here, just over a year later, I've talked to all the people that I've listened to 1,000 times on podcasts, people that like I admire, and that, you know, I would hear them talking and I'd be like, man, I would love to jump in and say this real quick. Oh, he missed that point. I wish I could just say this to him. And now I've talked to everybody. I mean, I'm talking to you right now. You know, I've talked to Tripoli, I've talked to Micah Dank, Janet, all these people, just by putting that intention out. So it's like,
right,
that intention is the most important thing. And like the spelling, you know, you're literally like you were saying, you're speaking vibrations, you're using you're a spell to speak vibrations to manifest reality. And you can even if you just use like the Bible or Christianity as a reference point for that, you know, God spoke the universe into existence. Or the Om in Buddhism, right? The sound of the universe, Om, like it's
right.
just vibration manifesting itself into reality through intention. You know what I
Right.
mean? So that's some powerful stuff right there, man.
Well, and the key, the key is gratitude, right? You have to make something exist in your mind, and then you have to be grateful for it where it exists there, then, right? And because that gratitude is what is going to manifest that in your physical experience, which is asked backwards for a lot of people. A lot of people will say, you know, how can I be grateful for something that I don't have yet? Not understanding that you do have that. You know, as soon as that exists here, or as soon as that exists in the mind, it's real. It's just as real. You know, you have to ask yourself, what is real, right? Is this table real? Is it going to be here in 100 years? You know, what is real to you? Does something that you can perceive with these five senses that we're taught to use, does that make it real? You know, are holograms real? You have to ask yourself what reality is to you, and now we take that and tie that to this subjective truth thing that we're talking about, and how all truths are but half truths. Well, that applies to everything. That applies to this reality, this table, that these are all, we're all exactly the same. And how these things were created was they existed in the mind of the creator, right, before they existed here. And so we have to use that same, we are co-creators of this experience. We're gifted very, very powerful creative abilities, and when we choose not to use those, we are again a victim of somebody else's creative abilities as opposed to a master of ours. And so I'm a big believer that there's no neutral, right? There's no stagnant. You're either eating or you're being eaten. You're either going forward or you're going backwards. And so we have to understand and understand our gifts as these creators, and we have to take responsibility for those, and we have to refine those gifts, and we have to create an experience that we can be proud of. Otherwise we're not going to be happy. You know, it doesn't matter how fat and happy your life is, if you are not, if you haven't taken responsibility and you haven't taken ownership of your experience, you're never going to be truly happy. There's no amount of money in the world that is going to make you feel fulfilled if you are not dictating your experience, you know. And that's something that all these millionaires that you talk to, they have, I don't know if anybody's read Miracle Mornings, I think is what the book's called, where this guy, he went out and he studied all these different millionaires and basically took all the things that they had in common, right, that they all did, and then developed this system. And the real key that he noticed with these people was their morning rituals. It was how they started their day. And I use that word very deliberately because we are taught that rituals are bad,
Mm.
right? That a ritual is yeah, that's satanic. That's what devil worshippers do is rituals. But a ritual is anything that you do uh, with regularly, like a method that you have with intention associated with it. And so your morning rituals are just how you start your day, right? And part of this miracle morning thing was, and I'm paraphrasing, I haven't read this book for a long time, but it was go to bed an hour earlier and wake up an hour earlier every day, right? It was do some sort of exercise in the morning. It was writing down your goals and reading them aloud, right? And I think there was some mirror work as far as you telling yourself that you were capable and that you were going to achieve these things. And it's incredibly important that we treat ourselves the way that we want. The way that we treat ourselves is the way that our experience is going to treat us. And so learning ways to communicate, because the brain is not capable of producing a thought. Okay, the brain is an amplifier of thought, so it's like an antenna. So your consciousness or your mind is what is producing these thoughts, but this is a physical experience, and so we need a physical vessel to exist here, and the brain is the medium via the pineal gland that translates this consciousness, this thought from the mental realms, right, into this physical experience. It amplifies these things. And so this is the tool, the brain is the tool that we use to communicate with the mouth, that is the tool that we use to vibrate these things into reality. And so understanding this process and how it works, and when you break it down like that, you start to understand why this whole fluoride gig is so important. I think Matt used the analogy that when your pineal gland is calcified, it's like trying to drive with the windshield iced over, and not being able to see where you're going. And I one-upped them and I said, yeah, or like trying to drive with the windshield iced over from the back seat when you can't reach the pedals, or the steering wheel. You're kind of just along for the ride, and you don't have this ability to think critically or to question or to process information or to really grow. First time fluoride was used was in the internment camps. And then because they figured out it made the prisoners docile, and then they used it in the prison system, and now they put it in the water. When I quit drinking a few years ago, they put me on antidepressants, right? I was on Prozac for a long time. What's the main ingredient in Prozac? It's fluoride. That's all Prozac is a gigantic dose of fluoride.
They put it in the toothpaste because your mouth has direct blood vessels that go straight to the bloodstream. So it's the reason it's in your toothpaste. It's not to keep your teeth clean; it's to get in a direct into the blood.
They're spraying that shit in your mouth while they're working on your teeth, while you got your tongue up in there. Your tongue is the fastest. Under your tongue is the fastest way to metabolize anything. It hits you almost instantly. That's why, like for nausea medication and stuff, they have you put it under the tongue. And so you putting that, you having fluoride shot into your mouth under your tongue is just like you're basically slamming in the main vein, and you got just a freeway directly to that pineal gland. And until I set out to try to eliminate fluoride from my life, I had no clue how hard that was going to be. If you go to the store and you look at the ingredient list and it says filtered water or it says purified water, there's fluoride in that shit, dude. If your juice is, even if it says 100% fruit juice, right? If it has water in the ingredients, because almost all of it is made from concentrate. And if it's not made from concentrate, it's incredibly expensive. But dude, it's got fluoride in it. If you're drinking soda, which I hope you're not drinking soda because it's terrible for you, but if you're drinking soda or seltzer water or Gatorade or anything that you buy at the store that does not say distilled on it, then you're drinking fluoride. man. These sauces that we use that have water in them, and you go to a restaurant and believe they're pulling that shit out of the tap, you know. And so to eliminate it from your diet, you have to find a natural source, right? Living spring water somewhere, and make sure that it's clean, and then maintain a supply that way. Or B, drink distilled water, right? Which is, people talk about, I can't afford to drink distilled water. I buy it by the gallon, and it's like 75 cents a gallon. Just me, I use about a gallon a day. And so it's like, it's 75 cents a day, you know. That's less than your cheeseburger that you buy on the way to work.
Don't you need to like still kind of, if you're drinking distilled water, shouldn't you still what's the word I'm looking for, like supplement minerals? Because doesn't distilled water pull out
It's
a lot
empty.
of
It's
right.
empty. Yeah. And here's the thing, though. There's a lot of schools of thought on this. I think that a lot of that problem can be solved with a daily multivitamin. A lot of those minerals, as far as your phosphorus and your magnesium and your iron and shit like that, you're gonna get from the food that you eat, right? I
Get your
think that
athletic
there's
greens, people. Get those athletic
right.
greens.
I think there's something to be said about living water energetically.
Mm.
I think that water that is coming from there, because the earth is alive, right? It's a living, breathing, sentient being. You know, we were taught all these things about gravity and the tides and everything. It's my belief that the tides are just the breath of the earth, and so it breathes out and it breathes in, and just like we breathe out and we breathe in and we oxygenate our blood, and that's what feeds our body. I think that the earth is doing something very similar. And you know, once you start to understand piezoelectric properties, and the fact that, you know, the earth has the same liquid to solid ratio that we do, and this a very similar salt content that we do, you know, it's like your tears are salty. This salt is very important, and it's a very potent neurotransmitter. And so we all know what it feels like when we stand in the ocean, and how clean and how refreshing and how grounding and purifying that is. Well, you're plugged into this network of piezoelectric deposits all over the world, right? And so that's a whole different kind of grounding when you're in the ocean and you're literally being charged.
Mm-hmm.
But and so when you're pulling water from a spring that has been in the earth, that is this water is carrying vibrations. There's a book called The Miracle of Water that I would encourage everyone to read. It's Dr. Emoto did it, and he talked to his water, right? And he would photograph it on a molecular level after talking to it. And when he would say things like "I love you" or "You're beautiful," the water would make these shapes that were uniform and symmetrical and aesthetically pleasing. And when he would tell it it was ugly, right, or say "I hate you," it would make these ugly, obtuse, asymmetrical, unappealing shapes. And this water, just like crystals carry a vibration, and then bringing them into our field is going to alter ours. This water is structured, and as we drink that, it's going to affect our energy, right, and our vibrations. And so and then he found out that he didn't even have to talk to it. He could just meditate, or he could think something and direct it towards the water. And this might be getting a little woo woo for people, but like, we've all stood next to somebody and gotten vibes that we didn't like, you know. And people talk, how many songs are there about good vibrations and shit like that, you know? We all know it. We just don't like to admit it, because it means that we have to take responsibility for our experience, right? And I would argue that we are water is the medium, and air is even water. It's just less dense than the water in the ocean or the water in a river. And so you could argue that we're all fish, and that this water is a medium that is carrying these vibrations. And these vibrations, when we're in tune, we can use a different mouth, right? We can use thought, and sound is still a very powerful way to amplify that, but I can communicate with people without using words, and it's something that takes practice, and it's something that not everybody is going to be receptive to or understanding of, but it's very possible. It's very possible. And another thing people should research is the word empath. I think that everyone to some degree is an empath,
I was
right?
just gonna say that, yeah.
And the key to unlocking these abilities is to understanding these abilities and understanding that you are capable of these things. And I'm not saying that all of us can levitate, or that all of us can communicate telepathically, or that all of us can experience precognitive visions, or I'm not saying all of us can do anything. I'm saying we're all very special in our own ways, and there's nobody here that's not good at anything. There's nobody. There's people that are afraid to try, right? And understanding, and there's some really teeny bopper woo-woo stuff as far as like the 6 clairs, clairvoyance, clairsentience, and different types of being an empath. And I would just say not to get too caught up on any of those things, that when you're taking in this information, when you're reading, you need to keep your awareness in your third eye and in your gut, and you need to use your discernment. And if something looks like bullshit and it tastes like bullshit and it smells like bullshit, that's probably because it's bullshit. I leave it there. But if you're reading something and it feels good and it feels like the truth to you and it feels like it's resonating, then soak that up, man, and take that with you and apply that to your experience, because you don't get better doing the same shit over and over again. If you are going to continue doing the same things, and your experience is going to continue to be the same. And so if you're afraid to branch out and try these new things, then you just need to get comfortable with this apathy and this compromise that we're being handed, and ultimately that's what this whole American culture is one gigantic compromise. Middle class America is what, 85% of, and this is struggle, right? It doesn't matter how good your job is. You get a better job, you're going to get a bigger house and a nicer car, and then you're going to want a boat. There is no enough. And something I say all the time is, people with money don't talk about money. It's not about this material stuff. They're experiencing, they're trying to do what makes them happy, and that's where we should all be at. And identifying money as the material monopoly substance that it is, and treating it as such, is an important part of your experience. Because if you're here to get money, then that's what's going to drive your experience. And if that's where you're at, that's okay. I believe with every ounce of my being that we need to fail, right? And we need to fail. I've been here a lot, right? And there's a lot of people that are up in the air about reincarnation or whatever, but I am of the belief that this takes more than one try, and that you get here and you learn and you fail, and you get here and you learn and you fail. And even on a smaller scale, how we grow is through individual failures. And so we have to let ourselves fail. If you're not failing at something, you're not trying hard enough, right? You need to be taking risks, and you need to be learning from your mistakes, right? Because if you're afraid to make mistakes, then you're going to be you're not going to grow. And it's important for us to let the people that we care about fail, because all we're protecting them from is their growth. We need to let these people try to do what they care about. And if that means that my little brother is going to spend this whole life trying to put a bunch of money in the bank that he can't take with him when he dies, then that's his path and that's his choice, and I need to respect that. And I can be here and I can offer my opinion, and I can tell him what makes me happy and what makes me feel fulfilled. But it's not my job to engineer anybody else's experience. And so understanding what happiness is for me, and that might not be what happiness is for anybody else, was a huge part of my struggle. Because when you wake up, man, you just want to share this shit with everybody, right? You want to save everybody. And I say all the time, this train's not for everybody. It's there are people that are gonna want to know and gonna try to use this very, very powerful tool we have called the internet, and try to use spiritual avenues as far as intuitive learning to try to understand what this is and how it works. And there are people that aren't, and that's okay. We're back to, you got to put yourself first, and you've got to do what you need to do for your experience to feel fulfilled, and you can try to help people with your overflow. But ultimately trying to make somebody do something that they don't want to do because you think that's the best path is a waste of your energy, and it's a challenge on their free will, ultimately.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, you know, I like to think that we're all magicians, you know, riding this wave of frequencies in a holographic universe, you know what I'm saying? And it's like we were saying, we've been saying this whole time, essentially, you know, you're only going to make out of this reality what you make out of this reality. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Whether it's positive or negative. And neither one of those is necessarily bad. You know, like you were saying, in the natural world, nothing is really good or bad. It just is. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's up to your perspective to kind of put that in its own box. But
And people that would argue that, I would say, you know, at what temperature does cold water become hot? You know?
Yep.
And it's all perspective and opinion, and you can't let somebody else's perspective or opinion dictate your life. You're either trying to live righteous, or you're trying to look righteous. And so you got to make that choice, and you got to commit to that choice, and you got to drive your experience.
Absolutely, man. Well, dude, this was a banger, man. This was awesome. I honestly, you know, like I said, all your whole message, your whole vibe, like all I pick up is just like positive, you know, good shit from it. You know what I mean? So I'm super stoked that you came on here and spent some time. I know we went a little longer than I told you we were gonna go, so I appreciate you riding it out with me. But you know, you got any like final thoughts or anything that you want to like tell people, and also like where they can find you and all your shit before I shut her down?
Yeah, man. My home right now is Instagram. Hatter will happen. Hatter underscore will underscore happen. I would just encourage people to step outside their comfort zones, and I would say that I respond to all my messages. If you're trying to improve your life and you don't know where to start, you know, self-love is where you start. And if you got questions, man, about crystals or about alchemy or about anything, vibration, word magic, if you are trying to make a difference in your reality and you want help, then reach out, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to have 10,000 or a million followers. I'm not here to try and make money. I'm here to empower people and show people that, and I've never helped anybody, right? I show people how to help themselves. And when people are ready to put in the work, because if you're in a vibration of waiting for someone to save you or to fix your life for you, then I can't help you, you know. But if you're ready to work, man, and you're ready to get uncomfortable and you're ready to challenge yourself, then I would encourage you to reach out and let's figure it out, man. I still grow every day. And it's a process, and it starts with one little thing, and it turns into whatever you want it to turn into. And so read the Kabbalion, read the magic of the miracle of water, read Word Magic by Pao Chang, and start to educate yourself, start to understand what the words that you're using mean and how they affect your experience. And reach out with questions, man. We'll grow together.
Yeah, man, for sure. And right before we were gonna get off, she showed up, so I want to at least let her say hi to
Perfect.
you, because she...
Hey there.
Hi.
How are
How's it
you?
going?
I'm
Good.
well, thanks. Very grateful for the opportunity to be heard.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I listened to your podcast. He sent it to me and I was like, dude, this is great. And I'm
That's great.
like the moment where you talked about like not being able to be in the material world and the spiritual world at like the same time. And I'm like, dude, that like really resonated with a lot of stuff that I was kind of working through at the moment. So
That's great to hear.
it's
That's
given me a
great to
lot of
hear.
ideas.
Awesome. Well, you ever want to chat about it, reach out. I'm always available. This is hearing things like that are why I do what I do, you know. Until people go on a podcast or start doing this regularly, they don't understand the energy that goes into something like this. And when you're trying to transfer knowledge or transfer information, it's very taxing, and so that is the reason that the energy gets dumped into this, and why I spend my Sunday morning at 11:11 on here with headphones on, is to hear things like that. So I really appreciate the words, and I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate you letting those words land on your ears and on your heart, and that's why I do what I do. So thank you.
Heck yeah. And the part where you were talking about the crystals and the fact that you were like, and when anybody tries to tell you like, oh, you need this one and this one and this one, and it's like, the time, where did we went to?
We went to a crystal shop somewhere, I don't know.
Casadega, and I went in and I was like, I thought about this one. I got this little green, just because I walked in and I grabbed it and I'm like, this is the one. I'm like, I don't even know what it does yet, but this is.
Well, and that's how you start, you know. People get so caught up on what is working for other people, and what's going to work for me is not necessarily going to work for you, and what I need to work on in my life is not what you need to work on in your life. And one thing that Janet talks about a lot that I love is that your body knows what it needs, you know, and she'll tell you to, when you're taking a new vitamin or a new supplement, to put it in your hand, put 2 of them in your hand and see what that feels like. You know, if you don't like that, then take one of them out and see what that feels like. And it's just like with these crystals, when you walk into that crystal shop, those things hum, right? And these crystals, it sounds silly to say, but they'll talk to you, you know, and they'll tell you that they want to go home with you, and when you're done with them, they'll tell you that they're ready to go somewhere else. And I don't know how many times I've had a crystal that said it was done, you know, and that it was ready to go somewhere else. And what's funny is I'll have one tell me that, and then I'll have somebody walk into my experience that day or the next day, and it's like, this is who that's for, you know. This is where they're at. And so I don't, very rarely will I sell one of my crystals. I would rather gift them or trade them, because I want to pass on that growth, you know. That's what it's all about, and stepping outside of that comfort zone. And if somebody would have told you a year ago that you could hear these crystals, that these crystals would talk to you, you probably would have laughed at them. But after experiencing it, it opens a lot of doors. And one of my favorite things to say is, I've never heard anybody say that, yeah, my life was great till I started carrying rocks in my pocket. You know, it can't hurt, you know. And if you go into something with good intention, and or the intention to improve your life or the lives of whoever you're buying the crystal for, that's palpable. That's going to matter, you know. Grandma's cookies or grandma's enchiladas, or you know, we all have a family member that makes some dish, and you could use the same recipe, right? You could cook it exactly the same, but it's not the same. And it's that love and it's that intention that is cooked into it that you're tasting. And it's measurable and it's beautiful. And so, you know, when you gift these crystals, I would encourage you to consciously put some intention and put some love into that thing before you hand it over. And that will be felt and experienced by the recipient for sure. Crystals are a very special thing.
Yeah, we'll have to get you back on here at some point and go deeper into all that stuff, because, you know, that's all.
Anytime, man.
Yeah, for sure, man. Absolutely. Well,
Anytime.
dude, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you saying hi to this beautiful
lady. Man, I'm glad she made it back. I'm glad she made it back in time. That's great.
Absolutely,
I was out getting an ornamental pepper plant
Awesome. Well, that's why we ran long, was we were waiting for you.
We just waited for you. That
So
was the whole
yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
It worked out perfect. It worked out
That's
perfect.
good
I
stuff.
really appreciate the opportunity, man. I really do.
brother.
And
Absolutely.
whenever you want to do this again, you let me know. You give me a little bit of notice, and we'll make it happen.
Show up in the dream again, man, and we'll do it.
Will do.
All right, man. I love you, man. We'll talk to you soon, brother.
I love you guys too. Thanks
All right,
again.
bud.